Hello and welcome to this discussion, this snackable discussion on how to ride the AI traffic wave. Perhaps you are a CIO, perhaps you are a COO, and you are wondering how your organization needs to use AI, but also what it means in terms of your network, because there's a huge change in how traffic is evolving within your corporate network and internationally. And this is what we're going to talk about now, how AI is really driving the next wave of network traffic, both globally and within your organization. It's not just about volume, it's the value of traffic. What you're doing with your network is becoming even more valuable to what you do every single day in your business. It is enabling, your networks are enabling AI-powered decisions, and decisions that are now able to happen in real time. And we know that there are a number of different traffic hotspots. There's no surprises that a lot of what's happening is within the campus network, but it's not just the campus network. It's also in the wide area. And when I say the wide area, we're talking about all sorts of different aspects of the wide area. We're talking about the network edge, the metro, national networks, and international as well. And the needs are rising, particularly as you may be making decisions about where AI workloads need to be processed. And I think this is where I'd like to bring in our good friends at Aurelion, Johan, to talk a little bit about what this means in terms of this change in the composition of network traffic, helping to support decisions, and what that means in terms of choosing service providers, certainly in that wide area network environment. Johan, some thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to have a view of connectivity specifically to cloud applications, to have a good connection towards different kind of clouds, specifically when there's about sovereignty going in sovereign cloud, sovereign AI. That part of it, it's important that you have a wide connections to it, and connection to that, and potentially towards the AI centers that is used for processing.
So if traffic today is quadrupling, but a third or more is AI driven, you're going to have to worry about the sovereign AI environment. That's something that's already coming up, right, with enterprises that you're doing business with. What else?
And it's that traffic, the value of the traffic is going up. So it's very important that you have a good control of the traffic. So you get visibility of networks, you get to understand how you're going to process the data, the traffic in this kind of environment, definitely.
And so that will change some of the service level agreements as well, I would imagine.
That could be changing the service level agreements, changing the way that you're designing the network, because network inherently, it goes on fibers, they get cut. So that means if you're going to build yourself away from that, you need to have multiple routes, you need to know where they are, you need to know the performance.
Jürgen.
Yeah, like in every business application, the enterprises are architecting their AI augmented solution for outcome. And while I see many enterprises designing what they can get from large language models versus what they can get from their own expert systems that they have had for quite a while versus smaller language models, there's one thing that is usually overlooked. And that's the fact that, number one, they usually don't live in the same places. And secondly, they got to be interconnected. And that interconnect carries your company value, the enterprise's value, because the data is the value, not the model itself, but how you use it, how you feed it with your own data. And hence that real-time visibility into your business processes and the early planning and involvement of connectivity into your system architecture is absolutely critical.
We've been talking about the real-time enterprise for at least 20 years, this concept. And now, of course, we can deliver this that enterprises can be situationally all-seeing about all of their assets, whether they're physical human assets, whether it's a train, whether it's a warehouse, whatever. All of that is now possible with the right network. And they actually have to be, I think, environmentally aware as well. That's not optional. Environmentally resilient. And that's not just in terms of power utilization, but actually resilient in terms of, as we were hearing about, the network, if rerouting network, particularly if it's supporting real-time decisions. And if all of this works really well together, these real-time decisions and that situational, all-seeing visibility, they can be predictive. And I think that's why enterprises increasingly are demanding much more of service providers. And certainly from the work that we do, enterprises are saying to us that they want that real-time network performance reporting as absolutely mandatory. And that's a massive change that AI is driving, right? And from your perspective, and let me throw this, I think it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more from Jürgen on this. I mean, what else do you think that they need to do to achieve these sort of real-time ambitions? How should they be pushing on service providers? What are your thoughts?
Camille, I'm really always surprised how enterprises are talking about, their ambitions to be this real-time enterprise, and then they're moving from a highly available, resilient connection to a broadband connection. Why is that? Well, because we as an industry have done a fab job over the last decade to provide resilient and reliable connectivity. But we gotta understand that now AI is taking that requirement for real-time visibility to a next level. Not because, the enterprise might go offline and certain, processes are coming to a halt. No, it's because AI augmented systems, and we saw it nicely in your graph, they're just there and they need to be 100% operational. And AI doesn't live in one place. And there are two things that AI does. It communicates with other machines. So there's a lot of machine to machine, not only on a manufacturing floor with robots, but there are also elements where the human, you said it nicely, the human and the machines and AI interact. And guess what? Once this experience is distorted, then it's not as easy as flipping the switch back on and let's keep on going to push forward. There's a big trust element in that. And so once that trust is gone, just think about the first versions of ChatGPT. You ask it, oh, how far is it to the airport? When do I need to leave? And it assumes you have a fighter jet instead of a bicycle, right? Of course, you're like, I'm not going to ever ask you anything again. So from the get-go, enterprises need to ensure that not only the AI models do what they're supposed to do, but that they are always connected the right way with the right capacity, latency, and it doesn't have to be a 1.6 tera connection to every enterprise. But let's keep in mind, it lives on the edge, as you said, it lives in a big cloud, in an AI factory, and it might live in your enterprise. So bringing those solutions together, like Johan and his team do, is absolutely critical for those enterprises.
And there's still a lot to be done. I mean, I was shocked speaking to a number of enterprises recently, and to see how many very large enterprises are still using. Oh yes, they're using a digital network, but they're also using some kind of physical device for large data transfers still, because there's no credible alternative option yet. But they've still got to scale. And the security and the importance of what they're doing, these data intensive workloads, is getting even higher. So it's a really tough situation, I would say. And that involves things like the energy usage as well. I mean, from your perspective, I mean, Johan, if you want to talk about that as one of the issues, with all of these data intensive workloads, there's an extraordinary amount of energy utilization as well. You'd have thought that this would also have an impact on enterprises considering new types of consumption, right? From a contractual perspective, are you seeing that from a sort of consumption on demand type of interest in that?
We haven't really seen so much in terms of that. And actually, we do have a part of our solutions, the IP and Ethernet network, that is very flexible and you can boost up to big levels. So and that is kind of where you can do really big data transfers kind of on demand, because it's quite hard kind of on the optical side to do on demand, because that is at the moment it's hardwired, and then you are left with a lot of idle capacity, and we can't have that.
No,
But
absolutely. But at the same time, you do need this orchestration, right? Jürgen, you were saying.
Yeah, so Johan is absolutely right. The way we have been doing optical networks has been very static. And there are physical limitations to what you can do short of patch robots going left and right, or having massive optical switching fabrics that are going to do what you need to do. But we got to keep in mind that not everything is a complete forklift operation in terms of what the enterprises require. So the orchestration comes in at multiple layers. And yes, there is also an optical orchestration that can happen to reroute capacity from an edge data center A that is wired to B through a ROADM network into C. So all of that is possible, but it's going to really challenge the way we do capacity planning, the way we prepare it, and the way we market and actually sell those products.
But that's what the enterprise expects, right? So that will be the reality, the new reality. Right, Johan?
But I think also the cost of, specifically when you get into the AI thing, the cost of the AI processing and all that kind of stuff is quite high. And I think the cost of the connectivity is relatively low compared to it. So if you really need to have the big capacity flows, it's quite easily to have that from a wavelength point of view. And there we have a great development in larger waves. We have just had a trial now with 1.6 terabit wave, and that is driving down the power cost on producing the connectivity. And on top of that, we can soon do 800 gig waves. So that is massive data transfers that we can do on that kind of a network.
Okay.
And I think, Johan, what you're enabling your customers with that is to actually go and really help to monetize on a big investment. If an enterprise drops $1 million on a rack of GPUs and they are not using it overnight, why not? Put that idle compute on a brokerage and have workloads running for a couple of hours there. And that can really only happen if they have that high-speed connectivity that you just mentioned.
Absolutely. And but essentially we cannot afford any wastage. We need to streamline, orchestrate that network cloud operations. And indeed, if you ask enterprises already why they're using certain high capacity services, 100G now, but 400G is coming like a freight train already. It is to be sure that they're not wasting capacity and cloud when they're working with their different AI partners who may be familiar and unfamiliar logo names within the business, from the Googles and AWSs to the CoreWeaves and others, right? But think about this. Do you think that enterprises should fundamentally expect that the connectivity, scalable capacity be bundled with GPUs? I mean, is that the way it should move in the future, where sort of AI workloads power is essentially bundled with that scalable capacity? Is that a realistic expectation? And if it is, what do we need to work on to make it happen?
So if I may jump in here, I have been a big fan of telcos and service providers climbing up the stack, trying to bring compute and connectivity together, because nobody's trusted more than the service provider of an enterprise. So the challenge, however, comes when you talk about scale. You have global hyperscalers, which have massive amount of data centers. They can share everything nicely. And then if a service provider would go and deploy a little edge data center, which is shared across 5 or 10 enterprises, it makes a really hard business case. So I personally believe, edge compute specifically has not taken off as we wanted to in the last decade for very obvious commercial reasons. However, I do think that there are players evolving in the market on compute, who want to go deep into the network, into the market, who will require partners that will go and deliver a kind of combined solution to an enterprise. So I think it's going to be more a question of the right alliances, strategic alliances and partnerships, than it is, hey, Aurelion is now going to buy 10,000 GPUs and going to deploy them across their footprint. But Johan,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to speak for you. That's just my.
I think as well. I don't think we would, as a service provider, would go into that kind of a business. We might partner with somebody in order to provide that. There we have, as I said, the layer 2 Ethernet or the IP layer where we can quickly scale, and it's soon up to, we are doing 100 gigs there, we're soon up to 400 gigs there. So we can do high there, and that could be a combination, but that would be in a partnership, so we can do something. But it's definitely possible to do physically. The question is to get the business models right.
And the new types of, I think, KPIs as well, because you can't contract like this with a 5 nines type of performance commitment. We're going to have to be a lot more nuanced than that. Speaking of someone who's to help negotiate contracts in this sort of space, that's part of the work that needs to be done. But before we get there, because that's more into the future, I think there's some recommendations that we can make to enterprises, right, Johan, in terms of how they must prepare for this AI traffic wave. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, to support the hybrid clouds is the first to come to mind. You need to build a network with mesh connecting the different kind of clouds, public, private clouds, sovereign clouds, sovereign AI environments, and how to connect all these things together in order to work for your business, and also how to share, on what information can you share between the different sovereign cloud environments that you might have. Of course, and scale is important. They need to talk to a partner with providers that can really scale the data flows, because the data flows are big, and you need somebody that can do really big data flows. And also expect transparency. Expect the providers to be transparent on how they're building their networks, because it's not really about 3, 4, 5, 6 nines. It's actually how they have built their networks in order to support it. SLAs are just in many ways a commercial arrangement rather than a physical one.
Right, but transparency is a starting point. We don't have all of the answers yet. We know the direction of travel, but if you start with a dialogue and you share information about what you've done, how you've built your network, and your awareness of some of these issues, that's an important step forwards in terms of building trust with your service providers, them demonstrating willingness to share information, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that's been very useful for enterprises right there.